Good morning, students. How are you today? Well, today we are going to be talking about the difference between defensive listening and awakened listening. Welcome to class. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit those buttons below before we get started, and let's go. Boop. Okay, you guys. Whoa, we are going to talk today about the difference between defensive listening and awakened listening. I just recently had an interesting experience who clearly was not listening. Let's talk about what defensive listening is. Defensive listening is literally not listening at all. Somebody who is defensive listening is caught up in a few things, and I want to talk to you about this because I recently had an experience where somebody was defensive listening, and they were hot-headed out of left field. I always feel compassion for these people. They're just not listening in a way that is going to benefit them. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about the difference, because it has a lot to do with our temperament. And so let's kind of go into the differences between defensive listening and awakened listening. How do you know if you're listening defensively? Okay, let's talk about a few of these things. You are frustrated when you're listening to somebody talk. You are hot-headed, and I like to call this the 5-second rule. If you have responded under 5 seconds, and that response was just instant the moment that somebody said something to you, chances are you are defensive responding. Now, it's not every time, but you have to check yourself before you wreck yourself. That's the whole point of understanding these little things that you're doing. Is nothing is set in stone, but these are just little markers for you to kind of measure yourself and see what you're doing. The next thing is, if somebody is talking to you and in your internal dialogue, you are focused on what your story is and what you're going to say in response or your comeback, you are defensive listening. If your face feels hot, if your heart is racing, if you feel anxiety, you are defensive listening because something in you has been triggered. And I got to tell you that a lot of times we are triggered by things that are from our perspective and in our own life, and a lot of times has nothing to do with what the other person said or did. It's because something they said or did pushed on something that we have unresolved in our own life. And I'll give you an example of this, is that sometimes people are just, maybe in their life they've been really hot-headed and they've been reactionary to everything. And someone says something and they react. And in so doing, they are willing to just blow up an entire relationship that was going really well, but they're willing to blow the entire thing up because they are stuck in their own storyline, and whatever that trigger was within them, they interpreted a situation from their trigger. Meanwhile, a lot of times other people, they don't know what's going on with you because they just said something, and it was literally something they just said. It wasn't something that was hostile. But a person can take it that way and blow up the entire situation because they're defensive listening. And defensive listening a lot of times comes from unresolved issues that you need to work out and work on yourself with. So if you find yourself doing any of these things when you're communicating with someone, the chances are that you are defensive listening. You are not an awakened listener. With that being said, let's talk about what an awakened listener is. We can kind of reverse engineer the 5-second rule. Someone who is an awakened listener is actually 100% focused on what you're saying. They are not in their internal dialogue and storyline about what they're going to say next. They wait until you're done talking, and then they have that little delay where they're thinking about, what am I going to communicate in response to what this person just said? It's the reversed engineered 5-second rule, which is If defensive listening means it's under 5 seconds, awakened listening is like 5 seconds or longer. You're waiting to kind of interpret the material or the data or whatever was said and coming up with the response. Now, the other thing is in defensive learning, you are speaking to win. You want to win. You want to be right. In awakened listening, that never enters your mind. You want to hear what they're saying. Winning never enters it. Understanding is the whole purpose. You want to understand the person, because with awakened listening, it's always about harmony and bringing people together. It's all about healing. It's not about winning. Now, a lot of us, myself included, I used to be super hot-headed, and I have moments where I can be activated and I can be hot-headed too. We are all human. We all do this. And there are certain people that really can, push on that sensitivity nerve to cause that within us, right? Because maybe we have a history there. If we have really done the work on ourselves, and if we are willing to look at what our issues are, what things we need to work on within ourselves, we are less likely to have reactive responses where we are willing to blow up everybody when they hit that nerve, or blow up that spot, or just react under 5 seconds, where our mission is to tell our story and to win at all costs, or to make somebody else wrong. If we're doing that, we have some unresolved issues within. And newsflash, it's not good for you, it's not good for anyone to react like that. We always want to respond, not react, because reacting gives away our power. And so I'm telling you all of this to give you a few tools to recognize if you are currently a defensive listener, or who you are defensively listening to, right? You might have someone in your life that it always seems to be a defensive listening interaction. And so you can take this information and you can intentionally decide that you are going to become an awakened listener, and you are going to write down those notes of everything I said an awakened listener does, what they do. They don't react. They don't have a storyline in their head. They're not thinking a storyline while the other person is talking. They take 5 seconds before they speak to think about harmony and healing. What's the best thing to say to create harmony and healing? So I want you to take notes. Go back and listen to the very beginning of this. Take some notes. And if you are a defensive listener, either all the time or with someone in particular, do that homework, do that work to figure out what an awakened listener is and begin practicing those things. And if you do that for 30 days, 28 to 30 days, you will create a new habit, a new way to be, because that's how long it takes to create a new habit. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening to Wisdom Wednesday. I hope that I see you next week. Make sure that you like and subscribe and all that jazz. And I'm so excited to be with you every week. I love you very much, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.